if somebody had asked me when we first started sort of fantasizing and things and said, doing this is going to make your relationship so much stronger, and you will be more in love with the person that you're already completely and utterly in love with, I'd have gone, no, it's not possible. But that is exactly what happens. And I didn't think I could love Mr. N any more than I already did.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from all over the world to hear their personal journeys of self-discovery through the lenses of love, sex, and relationships.
Our mission is to show people that they're not alone and to inspire them to embrace their true selves so that together we can open minds and live authentically without shame.
We believe everyone's story is powerful and beautiful, yet it's important to remember that everyone does life a little bit differently and that the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we aren't doctors. Please consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Well, welcome to episode 342. We're Finn and Emma, and today we have an interview with Mrs. and Mr. N. What? You're ready to interrupt me.
I was not. I was listening to you.
Today we have an interview with Mrs. and Mr. N. They have a podcast and book called Vanilla to Vixen, which you'll hear them talk about and all of us talk about more throughout the episode. But they've been together almost 20 years and have a wonderful story that they share with us today.
Yep, absolutely. I would just want to say really quick, I wasn't going to interrupt you.
I know, you were excited.
I think we're out of practice. Not too many people know we've kind of been gone about a month.
Yeah.
And all of the episodes you've been listening to, like the last 6 or 7,
We're pre-scheduled.
We haven't talked in front of a microphone in like almost 2 months, and so we don't know what we're doing.
I wouldn't say almost 2 months. It's been a month.
Which is closer to 2. Don't
be over dramatic.
That's almost 2 months compared to no months.
I just have to give you a hard time.
I'm going to edit you out. I haven't lost my editing skills.
Anyway, we have, to Finn's point, we have not been behind a microphone in between 1 and 2 months.
Ish.
Is that fair?
It's fair. Back to the point at hand, Mr. and Mrs. N share their amazing, amazing journey with us. It has been a very healing one, as you'll hear, over the last 20 years that they've been together and open for a good chunk of that. And Mrs. N had been battling some pretty severe physical pain that was tied to sex and sexual activity. And throughout this journey, she's really figured out, sort of nailed that down, worked through how she's been able to heal that and deal with that. But also just it created a lot of healing on the emotional side for both of them as they've navigated just confronting so many different stereotypes and all sorts of myths and misconceptions about what sex and what intimacy and what relationships were. So just all that to say, it's a beautiful story, and we're really excited to get it out there and to share their work as well. As Emma mentioned, please check out their podcast and their book, Vanilla to Vixen. Links are in the podcast show notes. You'll find those, down below or at our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com.
And one more thing, I just wanted to point out and just share that I love their term for their non-monogamy adventures. They call it the naughty hobby, and I think that's cute.
It is. I love it.
We will, for anyone who's a premium subscriber, we will get into the interview with Mrs. and Mr. N right now. And for anyone else, we are going to go through a few announcements. First up, if you're not familiar with the premium subscription, it's a way to skip these announcements up front, jump right into the interview right away. However, you still get important dates in the outro. To sign up, go to our homepage, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, and scroll down there and find the buttons to sign up.
The buttons.
I'm a little out of practice, okay?
It's because it's been almost 2 months. It's been 6 to 8 months since we've been in front of a microphone.
We're just going to make it longer and longer.
Longer and longer. Next up, our virtual community. We talk to you about this almost every week. That's because it is one of our favorite ways to find and meet amazing people in the world of non-monogamy, to get support, to find your people. You can find out. We are out of practice. You can find out more on our website at normalizingnonmonogamy.com. Click on the community tab and you will see how to apply and join for that. It is just a couple of bucks a month. And one thing I did want to tell everybody about
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I think I know where that's going.
Do you? We have an in-person gathering coming up in September. That is the weekend of September 13th to the 15th. We're going to be doing that in the Bay Area. And if you would like to learn more about that amazing gathering of, we're guessing 50 to 60 people, possibly more, are going to be descending on the East Bay. And we've got some really amazing stuff going on. So if you've been holding out on joining the virtual community because you're tired of everything being virtual because COVID wore you down, well, we also get together in person. So join the community. You can learn more and you can come meet all of us in person in the East Bay in September.
Yes. Just to make it super, super clear, this is a community gathering. So you, as Finn said, you'll need to join the virtual community. Come over there, join us, get to know everybody, and come visit and meet everybody in person in September in the Bay Area. Just had to reiterate.
Very clear.
The other thing we wanted to remind you all about is the week of visibility for non-monogamy. If you listened to last week's episode with Brett,
which you should have.
Yes, episode 341. First of all, go back and listen to that. And secondly, he talks a lot about the week of visibility coming up. It's going to be July 15th to the 19th. You can find out more at weekofvisibility.com.
And Emma and I will be running a workshop during that week. Most likely on Wednesday, it will be our Is There a Right Way to Do Non-Monogamy workshop. We've run it before. We're super excited to run it again and to be part of the week of visibility. I'll start calling that the WAV.
That's easy to say.
Yeah. Maybe the wove.
Wove maybe is a little better.
Well, I'll talk to Brett. See if it's WAV or wove.
And last but not least, a reminder to check out our favorite way to get tested for STIs. It is stdcheck.com. You can find links under the resources page at our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. Using those links gives you a discount, and making a 10-panel test only $129. It also supports the podcast. So thank you so much. We appreciate you using those links, and we appreciate you getting tested and knowing your sexual health status.
Yes, to all of those things.
And finally,
did you tell people how they can find out?
I did.
Did they? Okay,
yes.
I zoned out for a minute. I was thinking about wove.
And finally, a reminder, reach out to us, send us a voicemail, send us an email. You can find that information on the Contact Us page of our website. We would love to hear from you if you would like to come on the podcast, if you would like to ask us a question, give us feedback. We're open to all of it. Please reach out. And with that, we will go and talk with Mr. and Mrs. N.
Here we go.
Welcome to the podcast, Mr. and Mrs. N. We are excited to chat today and get to know more about you and just spend time with you today. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely.
We're incredibly excited.
We are. It's so nice to be over the pond. Well, virtually over the pond.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, and it's fun. I don't know. We were talking before we hit record that we might be interrupted. We usually get interrupted by dogs and cats, but we have an even more like a dinosaur that could come in here, which is a landline telephone. We were discussing the potential of that ringing. So for anybody who's not familiar with what that is, you can Google it.
Then
and you might even hear it.
I was like, then we got on a tangent about some people don't know what a landline telephone is.
I know, but we're familiar.
This is it.
Yeah.
This is it.
You see, when you wanted to block somebody on a landline, you just hung up.
That's it.
Yeah. And when you wanted to know who was calling, I don't know if this was a thing in the UK, but you do *69. Was that a thing for you?
Oh, we got 1471, but we didn't get that right until about the late noughties.
Yeah.
We were way behind on landlines.
I mean, we had proper dial phones. You know, where you had to put your finger in the dial and dial it round. It would take about half an hour to make a call.
Yeah, we've only just got electricity and lights over here.
Perfect. Well, we're so glad you were able to get a few minutes of electricity to talk to us today, and some internet even. Amazing. So it's dial-up, I'm sure, but
absolutely
that's totally good. So would you two be willing to introduce yourselves for anyone who's not familiar with the two of you?
We would. We are Mr. and Mrs. N, also known as
the Naughty Couple.
Yeah, and we spell it kind of weirdly, don't we? We spell it Naughty CP1. So it's like couple CPL, but we use a 1 instead of the L. It's all terribly complicated.
It is very complicated.
We wish really good for search engine optimization. It's
exactly. It seemed like a good idea at the time, not so much now.
Yeah.
But now you're stuck with it, right? So
yeah. Unfortunately.
And so, what brings maybe the two of you across the pond onto our podcast, and what are we going to talk about today? We know this is a leading question.
Well, Mrs. N is we are involved in the non-monogamous lifestyle. We're huge fans of your podcast. We love your podcast, and we like the subjects that you cover on it. And so I think we sent an email to you, and we sort of thought we'd let you know a bit of what life's like on this side of the pond, and how the lifestyle is over here. We don't even like calling it a lifestyle, do we?
No, it's called the naughty hobby, is what we call it over here.
Perfect.
I would love to start.
Yeah.
I would love to start with, like, how long have you two been together, and what drew you, what brought you to non-monogamy in the first place?
We have been together for 19 years.
19 years.
Married 18 years this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually married before I met Mr. N, and I had a little girl, and that, unfortunately, that relationship broke down. And then I was lucky enough to meet Mr. N, which is a story in itself. But we started off by sort of fantasizing, which is something I'd never done before.
It was quite early on in our relationship.
It was very early on in our relationship.
Quite early on. And it's not something I'd fantasized with anyone else in previous relationships. So it was just something that we did between us. We just found incredibly sexy and erotic. And so that's how it began. It was just fantasizing in bed, really.
Yeah. And that when that kind of came up, I could see that too it could be scary, right? I can see the fun in it. I mean, we've had that fun as well. But maybe initially, was there any tinge of like, whoa, hold on a minute. This is a bit too much?
I think.
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah, definitely.
It was pure fantasy. We never dreamed of doing that.
I have to be honest. I think you were definitely a little more open and probably what's the word I'm looking for? Can't think of the word. You were
reckless.
No, not at all. But you I think you had a broader knowledge of sex and what's out there than I did. I was quite a sheltered little girl, shall we say.
You're making me sound like a gigolo.
No, not at all. So obviously it was Mr. N that suggested, have you ever fantasized? And I was like, no, I wouldn't even know where to start. And in the beginning, I did find it a little bit odd because it just felt not natural to me at the time.
I had worked in entertainment. Let's just call it entertainment. I worked in entertainment for a long, long time in music and entertainment. And so I suppose I kind of, it was a far more, people think it's a rock and roll lifestyle, but it really isn't. It really isn't. And it can actually be quite lonely because, when you're out and working in music and things like that, you don't actually get to meet a lot of people. You get to meet a lot of drunk people at the end of the night. And so when I met Mrs. N, I had definitely 100% she is my soulmate. I think it's fair to say, I think Mrs. N would agree that I'd got probably quite a broad life experience.
Yes.
But I hadn't shared that life experience with anyone up until that point. Not romantically, if you would like to call it that.
Yeah.
So I felt very much like I wanted for her to experience some of the things that, not that I had directly experienced, but I suppose things that I had kind of seen from the outside, I suppose. Let's call it like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, like that you've had this sort of life of adventure. And
yes.
how do you share, maybe not those exact adventures, but the zest and the vibe of the adventure with somebody? It sounds like that was something you were craving for a while to be able to share that in a partnered way.
I suppose adrenaline.
Yeah.
Junkie. You call me an adrenaline
You are
junkie.
an adrenaline junkie, definitely.
And Mrs. N said that, and but up until that point, I really didn't see myself as an adrenaline junkie. But when Mrs. N pointed it out, yes, that's what it was, definitely.
It was also nice for me though, because past relationships had been very stagnant, shall we say. So it was all very one-sided. So I'd never had anybody that was really that interested in showing me pleasure or sharing something with me. It was always about the other person. So when I met Mr. N, and we talked and talked and talked. We always talk, and he openly said, there's so much more to sex than just penetration, and I hadn't experienced that at all. So to be able to share that with somebody that is your soulmate is the most amazing thing. And that's kind of where the journey started, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it's quite a story because literally on our second date, I know Mrs. N won't mind me sort of sharing this. So literally on our second date, we had an instant attraction, real deep attraction to each other. And Mrs. N said, "You might not want to be with me anymore." This was literally on the second date. You might not be interested in me. And I lots of things flash through my head as like, what are you going to say?
I'm an axe murderer.
Yeah, axe murderer. I really wasn't sure what she was going to say. And she said that she had a medical problem, which the problem was sensitive nerve endings inside her vulva, which basically meant that sex was often painful for her. And that was a big contribution to the end of what caused the end of her first marriage. And when she said it to me, it was almost like, oh God, is that all? Because it's like, we can get around that. We can work around that. And so I suppose that's where it all began, really, in effect.
Yeah.
And so there's so much more to sex than just pure penetration. We can do other things.
Yeah.
And it went on from, I think a lot of it was psychological, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you did obviously have a medical problem, but a lot of it was psychological because once obviously she believed that was painful, then it became, you tense up and it became more painful.
Sure.
So I think eliminating the psychological side of it was a huge thing in the beginning.
Yeah. What was that like for you, Mrs. N, to hear the thing that you were sitting there on your second date going, you'll probably never talk to me again. And instead you're met with, yeah, okay. Well, we got tools for that. We can work around this.
Yeah, I did my typical thing and burst into tears.
She introduced herself as an emotional wreck.
I was. At that time, I was a very broken lady, very emotional. My ex-husband had gone off and had an affair, which, I kind of understood why he did it because I couldn't provide that side of the relationship for him. But he wasn't, I'd never met anybody as understanding and as thoughtful and caring as Mr. N. And that it just blew me away because it was like, I didn't think people like you existed because I'd never met anybody like it. And all through our marriage, ever since we've been together, he's researched, he reads so much, he finds things out, he digs things out, and he'll say, let's try this. And, we're now at a point where I can actually have what I call normal sex without any fear of pain or,
But that has been in waves, hasn't it?
Yes.
Because it is a physical problem, and it's a very rare problem. And for any women out there, the worst thing is because it's such a feminine problem, it can leave them feeling unsexy about themselves, undesirable. And as a guy, I would like to say to any of your listeners out there that suffer any sort of problem like that it's about communication. And if somebody doesn't want to help you through that problem, then they are not worth it. You are worth far more because it's merely a physical problem. And as I said to Mrs. N right in the beginning, sex is so much more than just a physical penetrative act. And so, you know, for any listeners out there, then, you know, try and communicate with your partner. And if they won't help you, and if they won't communicate with you, then maybe think about, you know, what your worth is, because you're worth so much more than just a penetrative act.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so grateful you said that. And I think too, right, on top of some of the things you named, right, feeling unsexy, all of those things, there's all the societal pressure that gets heaped on, you know, particularly women, right? You perform, and that's what you said, like you couldn't perform, you couldn't give your husband what he wanted, so your husband went and found somebody else, had an affair, and then you're landing there trying to heal from that, going, I want to go on dates, but you'll probably leave me just like the last person.
Well, and it's not even easy to talk about with anybody either.
Yeah.
Jeez.
It's it's difficult, because obviously it is quite at the time. I mean, I've had this problem for over 30 years, and it took almost 20 years for the medical profession to actually find out what it was.
Yeah.
Because it's linked very closely with water infections and things. As a woman,
it's not even a real name for it. If you Google it and things like that, it will just come up with oversensitive nerve endings of the vulva. That's kind of more or less what it is, and it can lead to kind of tiny little lesions.
Bruising is another one, isn't it?
Yeah, bruising, but the worst thing is, from my point of view, that it can lead to constant water infections after sex. And so for a guy, you know, to have sex with your partner, somebody that you love, that you're madly in love with, but then see them suffer so badly for days afterwards, you feel a tremendous amount of responsibility for that. You feel like you've caused that. And that took me a little while, didn't it?
Yeah.
And so I almost became like Mrs. N's protector then, in as much as she'd get carried away during sex. And I'm like, no, enough now, because I know what's going to happen. And so that 100% changed me sexually, because, you know, I was always very careful, and I wouldn't push things too physically during sex. So it 100% changed me sexually, but I didn't care about that, because I was with the person that I loved, so I didn't care.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like this experience for both of you over this relationship has changed both of you sexually too. Like you've been there to support each other through this, to explore together in new ways, and that you've met each other there.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing as well, and I didn't realize this until obviously Mr. N and I started with the fantasizing and everything else, that how much I'd suppressed my
whole sexuality.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think I was too frightened to have sex, because I didn't want to be in pain. So I kind of, any emotions or anything that way, I just locked them away until I met Mr. N. And then he kind of like opened Pandora's box, shall we say. And as we started to sort of discover each other and find out about each other, and then it kind of, this whole world that had been locked away for so long suddenly came out, and it was like, whoa.
Then we couldn't put it back in the box.
It definitely is not going back in the box.
And then fantasizing moved on. We're talking about sort of old telephone lines and house phones and things. We're very old. So we started on something called Yahoo Chat. Does anyone remember that?
Yep. I was just editing an episode the other day where somebody talked about Yahoo groups, and I was like, wow, let me put up my AOL away message and go research this. Like,
yeah, exactly. So Yahoo Chat had something called an over 18. It was the most irresponsible thing, because they had over 18 chat rooms that you basically just clicked, am I over 18? Yeah. And yeah, that was it. You were in, and you could basically chat to anybody and everybody, and everybody had like webcams. For your younger listeners, we had webcams that were about 8 pixels, so you had to kind of squint and look at it and go, is that their face or is it a nipple? I can't tell. And we actually to start off with, we just enjoyed chatting, and like we'd found our own sexuality, I think, together. We were growing together, and we suddenly enjoyed this. I suppose it was like voyeur exhibitionism.
Yeah.
And I loved pushing Mrs. N. I'd been, in entertainment music, so I liked being at the background, and I liked just watching Mrs. N grow and develop, and seeing her blossom sexually, I suppose. And you were completely quiet, weren't you?
Oh, I was a nightmare in the beginning. I was really shy and almost not embarrassed, but it's just like I used to say to Mr. N, I don't mind people watching, but don't get me to talk to them. I can't talk to them.
She'd be like, I'll show my tits, but I'm not speaking.
Well, plus they
Now
might
they
think it's her
can't shut me
face.
up.
They can't tell. It's one pixel. So
yeah, that's it exactly. And we were chatting, and we got chatting to a guy. I think the world seemed, I'm probably just putting rose tinted glasses, but the world seemed a nicer place back then. I mean, you still got weirdos and sort of nutters on there, but you just press the block button and that was it. They were gone. And we got chatting to a really nice guy who was in the British military. And so he was all over the place. And this was about 2007. I think now we moved on to 2007.
Yeah.
And we ended up chatting to this regular guy, I should say, for about 3 years.
Wow.
And because he was in the military, he would sometimes just be lonely. So we would literally get together, always end up like masturbating, Mrs. N, but then afterwards we'd sit there and just chat. And so we had this social connection. And then 3 years of this continued. And he said one day he kind of knew the village of where we lived, and he said, "By the way, I'm actually passing where you live." And he lived on the other side of the country when he was in the UK anyway, and he was very rarely in the UK. And he said, "I'm passing where you live." And we just kind of looked at each other and we were like, "Shall we?" And we could feel our heart beating and a heart in our mouths. And we said, "Yeah, let's go for it." And we agreed to meet.
We did.
And it was the most terrifying thing we've ever done in our lives.
Absolutely petrifying.
Because we didn't set out to be swingers or to be non-monogamous. It was just something that we found we had a real kink for, and it was just something that we now understand as like a hot wife or whatever you wish, whatever label you wish to give it. We don't like labels, but that was definitely the kink we had.
And it sounds like you had been exploring this very slowly from the beginning of your relationship. Like you two, it sounds like, kind of started redefining sex for each other, with each other, as you were exploring over the first several years of your relationship, exploring how to navigate Mrs. N's health issues and coming out of other relationships and coming together, and then fantasizing, going into that, finding these new exciting things, and then talking to this one person for 3 years and just taking time to really slowly do it.
We did talk to others, but it was him we kind of regularly used to chat to. And so when, there was a great deal of trust there, even though it was just online chatting, because he shared some very intimate information of how lonely he got, went on sort of army maneuvers and things. So when we agreed to meet, there was a lot of trust between all three of us, wasn't there?
Yeah.
And he respected our relationship. I always say to people that within the swinging sort of lifestyle, or naughty hobby as we call it, that if somebody sees you as a unit, then it's usually that's a green light for us to proceed. If people kind of see you as two separate things and a gentleman's kind of after the wife, then it's probably not so good to proceed in that circumstance. But he definitely saw us as a unit, and he would talk to me when he was as much as you.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, you definitely had some sort of bromance going on.
A bromance, yeah. I thought he was very cool because obviously, he was in the army, and so we met, and none of us had done anything like this. It was the first time for him, and he was shaking. He came to the front door. Mrs. N sat there in a dressing gown and like brand new underwear you'd bought specially, hadn't you?
Well, you need to make an effort.
And we'd set specific.
It's 3 years in the making. You can't just show up wearing underwear from the first time you chatted.
She's a slow burner. And we had set sort of guidelines, hadn't we? Amongst all of us, we'd set sort of limits, and we said we weren't going to have full sex, and there was no kissing. Absolutely no kissing on the mouth, kissing everywhere else, but not on the mouth for you, and no penetrative sex. It was just going to be just probably a blowjob, and that was it.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was all we were going to do. One of those rules got broken.
And it wasn't the kissing rule.
The kissing rule remained, but the other one. And they ended up having sex while I kind of watched, and you did it 3 times.
Did we?
Yes, you did it 3 times. It's burned into my memory. It was very sexy. And I mean, I watched and it just developed. And Mrs. N was kind of biting her lip on the lounge floor, and she just kind of looked at me, and I could see just this utter look of eroticism and like I'd never seen. And I think I probably actually broke the rule, didn't I?
You did. You instigated.
So I just said, do you want to fuck him? And you just like frantically nodded your head. And he was really good because he's like, look, he's kind of stepped back and went, are you sure? Which was, it was very respectful. And I can honestly say, and I think you as well, Mrs. N, it was still one of the hottest nights of our life.
Absolutely.
It was like losing our virginity all over again. Yeah, it was incredible. And the next morning we just felt like we were floating on air because it was so perfect because it was brand new for him. It could have ended disastrously. And, we were well aware. We said, we don't want to fuck our marriage up. We don't want to ruin our relationship. We've got such a good relationship. And we were so frightened, but we still had this kink inside us that was almost like intrinsic, that we just had to just see where it went.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, I just think the whole thing is beautiful from start to finish, that you developed a 3-year virtual, I'm going to call it a relationship with somebody, that you two were getting something out of it for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He was getting something out of it for him. Everybody wins.
Yeah.
You were able to meet up. You have trust established. You have a connection established. We could say, you broke the rules, but you two were exploring. You were doing it consensually, right?
All 3 of them.
All 3 of you break the rules, but you do it in a way that everybody is on board, feeling safe, feeling comfortable.
It was guilt-free. It was guilt-free.
It was, yeah.
But we say that, but we still had like this tremendous amount of guilt from the outside world.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you can't tell it. Back then, probably relationships and non-monogamy is probably more out there now. But back then, it was still frowned upon. We're only talking like late noughties. Well, it was late noughties. It was 2010 when we actually had it. So it was 2010 when we had our very first meet with him, and we had no intention of doing any other meets with anyone else, and we didn't consider ourselves swingers, but really we were. It was recreational sex, There was no feelings there.
No, not at all.
As such,
I would honestly say that he became quite a good friend.
Oh God, yeah, a very dear friend.
Yeah, we still chat to him now, even after all this time.
Yeah, it's still special to us because of that moment. And then we kind of moved on, and we realised that we weren't going to see him again for purely logistical reasons.
I mean, we did live off that entire experience for about 6 years.
Yeah. It was.
That's amazing.
We did.
I know. You wouldn't think, would you? But it's like, you'd be in bed together. All of a sudden, you'd start talking about that evening, and you'd start, almost reliving it, and it would just have that same excitement. And
porn films became very boring. because you realize the plasticness of them and the falseness, and it's the complete opposite of what this was. It was something that happened in front of you, and for anyone that's never experienced anything with a third party or somebody else, porn is so different to what when you actually see it. It's just another world, you know. Porn feels suddenly so plastic and so false.
Yeah.
Compared to that.
Yeah.
And so so you're not able to see him again, and obviously you kept in touch,
Mm-hmm.
but where did that 6 years of now you've got a new fantasy role to play.
Yeah.
What comes sort of next in the journey?
Frustration.
Frustration.
That's valid.
Yeah. For a few years, we kind of lived on the thing that we could meet up again. And then we kind of like realized this is not going to happen again. And it was so perfect as well the first time. We were actually frightened, weren't we?
Yeah.
We were frightened and feared that, well, perhaps it's not like that all the time. We were actually quite sensible and we were like, that was perfect. And we went online, we were still online and heard, you know, we kind of saw there was a website over in the UK called Swinging Heaven. We read about horror stories of swinging meets and things like that. We became a little bit more streetwise to the whole thing, didn't we?
You say that.
Well, we were still incredibly naive. And yeah, we were, and we got frustrated, I suppose. So we went on Craigslist, which was obviously very American. We didn't have Craigslist over here. People only had Craigslist here if they wanted to sell like a vacuum cleaner or something. It was very boring over here. But they had the personal meets in Craigslist, and we met. Well, actually, then we got catfished. Our second meet was a disaster. Mrs. N had got a taste for the military. And so we decided to meet somebody else, and we got chatted to this guy, and he said he was a pilot. I didn't realize he was a pilot in the Second World War.
Yeah.
And Mrs. N kind of, you developed a bit of a kink then for being a cougar.
Yeah.
So you wanted like a, you know, not a younger gentleman, just a little bit younger. And so this guy came to, we agreed to meet, and we felt, you know, more confident this time. We know what we're doing. We're experts at this. No, we're not. And he came to the door, and he brought to the door with him. Well, I can only describe the gentleman as he was about 30 years older, at least, than his photo he'd sent to us. And he stood there with he had no idea. It was the first time for him again. And he had a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
And what was the other thing he had with him? I forget.
A bouquet of flowers.
A bouquet of flowers and a bottle of wine, which for a swinging meet is not really.
It's like, this isn't a date, dear.
And then he told us he was so nervous he had hired a car so that we didn't recognize anybody around. And he traveled like hundreds of miles, and he'd hired it. I was like, we don't live in the Bronx. Your car is safe outside our house. And it was a complete and utter disaster.
It was just awful.
I walked in and I said to Mrs. N, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything. Because what I realized now is, with experience, I would have just gone, look, you've catfished us. You look nothing like your photo. Thank you very much. And that would have been it. We would have just said no. But we were stupid and naive at the time. And so we invited him in, and we went through with the whole thing just out of British politeness and stupidity.
It's ridiculous when you think about it. It was one of those like, oh, I just want it to be over. You know, I mean, we laugh and giggle and we say things like, oh, you know, you take one for the team. And
it was,
that was definitely taking one for the team, that one.
And so that was a bit of a disaster, but we carried on.
Stupidly, we persevered.
I'm going to say, well, yeah, if nothing, we persevere with things. And
I just want to interrupt really quick and say, you're talking to two people who know this journey well. We've had some of those ourselves. People who, yes, we've had the large age gap from what they say. We persevered.
There's a learning curve, and
we look back and we're like, what were we thinking?
Yeah.
And we didn't know, right? We didn't know what we didn't know.
Yeah.
Well, and you have to remember,
Yeah.
other people don't necessarily know what they don't
Yep.
know either.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. He was doing his best and you were doing your best, and everybody's best was awkward and weird and crazy.
Yeah. That's so true.
Yeah.
And we had like a third meet. The third meet was really good. And we met another guy, and we only ever had the fantasy of the male, female, male thing,
Mhm.
you know, like just that was just what did it for us.
Yeah.
And then we came up to about 2016, and I kind of wanted to relive, because I'd given up my entertainment kind of career and moved careers, changed careers, and got my own business doing something else. And I wanted to try a club. So we have like swingers clubs over here. And so I think a part of me wanted to just relive that, you know, nightclub environment kind of thing. So I kind of like said, let's try a club, didn't I?
You did. Yes, it was your suggestion, definitely.
Yeah, and we literally have a club that we looked at all the clubs, and we found one called Liberty Elite, and that changed our lives. Literally going there, because once we went to the club, we suddenly felt we lost the guilt. We felt like we weren't just not two individuals, but a couple living this secret life that almost felt, you know, we were doing it behind curtains, and we suddenly found that there was this massive community, and we weren't seedy, we weren't, you know, sexual deviants, and it suddenly felt incredibly normal, and that changed everything.
Yeah. And so did you two start then frequenting the clubs and sort of going down that path?
Well, as you know, we rush into things, don't we?
I can't, after a month, bear in mind, you know, clubs over here. So we discovered that the club we'd gone to was like the club in the whole country. So that was something we learned. We had no idea. Again, we stumbled upon it. It was reasonably close to where we lived, and it was just luck that it was the club of the country, and they hold events and have hosts for certain party nights. It's a tremendously luxurious club, isn't it?
It is. What happened the first time we went there, Mr. N?
The first time we went there, well, we met a very sexy lady that got on very well with you.
No, before we went into the club, what happened?
Oh, she likes bringing this up.
We can tell.
Yeah. I got the time wrong, and so we sat in the car park for an hour because I was like, I'm a very over-enthusiastic person. And so we sat in the car park for an hour waiting, and you can imagine nerves. My fingernail marks are still in the steering wheel.
I literally do not know how we managed to stay there for the entire hour and then actually go into the club. I think most people would have driven off by that point.
But people were arriving in taxis, and they were like on first name terms with the taxi driver. We saw them going, "Yeah, see you, Bill. See you at 2:00 in the morning when you come to pick us up." You know, to the taxi driver, and that's just a name I'm making up. Bill wasn't really the taxi driver.
He might have been.
But yeah, it just quite like, I can't believe this. And the place is in the middle of nowhere. It's completely, you know, on its own. There's no villages around it. It's a wonderful, magical place. But for everything to suddenly be so casual was so foreign to it.
Yeah, it was really a strange experience.
Yeah, and everyone was so dressed up, and it was just so beautiful. And the club is split into kind of two. So at the front of the club, you've got a bar, a lounge, a dance floor with DJs and things. And then at the back of the club, you've got almost like a spa room with lots of beds, including a giant big bed in the middle. And you've got jacuzzis and a spa which holds about 24 people. The jacuzzi giant. So this was luxury compared to some of the nightclubs I'd seen in the past. And so it looked like a nightclub when you went in, and it was beautiful, but everybody was like so friendly and so nice. And because people didn't go there primarily for alcohol, we have quite a drinking culture here in Britain, which unfortunately, is not the best drinking culture. So a lot of nightclubs are like meat factories. And so this place was so different because there were so many sober people at the end of the night. And they're all so polite and friendly. And I mean, they could see that we were newbies.
Oh, we might as well have had a big sign above our heads saying fresh meat.
So you guys got out of the car that was in the parking lot for the last 5 hours.
Exactly. Exactly. The funny thing was, going into the club for the first time, it's like most people already have a preconceived idea of what a swingers club's going to be like.
Yeah.
And I think I spent the first sort of hour or two just staring at the floor because I was worried that if I made eye contact with somebody, they'd think I'd want to have sex with them.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to get into the habit. Actually, no, it's not like that at all.
No, it's just, it was amazing. And then, we carried on and we overindulged, as obviously. So we went to one event and then we discovered that all events are very different. So it's like, well, we've got to try all of them.
And I'd like to point out, you two had been like going down this journey for like over a decade together of different conversations and like slowly having experience. So the fact that you dove into the club, like I feel like you had been like preparing for that for a long time.
Yeah, but all of a sudden we were open to other kinks.
Yeah,
because you're just so much more open when you're in a club environment because you can talk about anything.
Yeah,
and
that first night, did you two just sort of stick together, or did you indulge in all of the activities and kind of give it, I don't want to say like the full experience, but or was it sort of just, hey, we're testing the waters?
I mean, we hadn't planned anything, had we?
No. We literally went in and I'm like, we'll just do the social thing and that's all we'll do.
Yeah.
And we met this gorgeous couple.
They could see because we were literally standing at the bar on our own looking petrified. And I think they took pity on us. And they were just, funnily enough, having just a normal conversation about camping. And they
I think they were very experienced though, and took us under their wing, and they beautifully at the bar were talking about camping to another couple, and then turned to us and just said, "Have you ever been camping?" and literally pulled us into the conversation, which happens a lot at the club, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yeah. And the evening just went where we chatted, and then they said, "Oh, we're going to go into the hot tub. Do you want to join us?" And it was like, "Well, yeah, okay then." So,
and she was a stunning lady.
Oh, she was absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So we went into the hot tub. So that was a lovely experience. And the hot tub is one of my favourite parts of the club.
And again, we felt whether we would be accepted because we weren't what we call a full swap couple. Mrs. N had no intention of sharing me at this.
Oh, no.
We liked the hot wife thing. So we told them our kink and what we liked and what we didn't like. And they, again, were totally respectful of that.
Yeah. And in the end, we did lay on the big bed with them.
You ended up on the big bed.
Yes, we did end up on the big bed, and all it was is I think I gave the guy a blowjob, and that was it.
You played a little bit with the lady as well, which was quite really sexy. That was like I lived about 10 Christmases in one that night.
Amazing.
Yeah. We had such a good night that we overindulged and we just wanted to try other things then. And that was brilliant for about 4 years up until COVID. and that was shit.
Yeah. So you found your stride, it sounds like, for those 4 years, exploring in the way that worked for you, meeting people. And did the way, before we get to COVID and from then, but from that point on forward, in those 4 years, did you two change how you approached playing with others as well?
Yes.
Did we?
Yes, we did, definitely. Because we I think it changed us as people. I think it changed us, even back then, it changed us as people. Because Mrs. N we would see the subject of swinging and things on television. And it was always portrayed in the UK as either ridicule, something to be laughed at, or still had that seedy feel to it.
Yeah.
And it's always been like that. And the community that we met at the club was so such a miles away from how it was portrayed on television and in the media, that Mrs. M became really like fiercely defensive of the naughty hobby, as we call it.
Yeah, I got incredibly frustrated because I think having gone through our journey, like you say, it taken at least 10 years for us to get to the stage where we were going to the club and we were meeting all these amazing people, and learning about other people's dynamics as well. And it wasn't just, the same as myself and Mr. N, that, a hot wife couple. There were people there that did full swap. There were people that, only played with women.
They were all aware of Mrs. N's medical problem that she was still suffering with up and down. Yeah. And she found a tremendous passion for anal sex. So you could do anal sex totally relaxing because obviously, it wasn't anywhere near her pussy. So, and all these people were just so respectful. And you just found out that everybody's so different, but so accepting. And I think it did change us massively as people. And then COVID came along.
Yeah. And at this point, was it still primarily a hot wife dynamic where you would kind of go and sort of the spotlight was on Mrs. N for a lot of it, and you were sort of just living it up in that way?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's funny, actually, because I think the club helped to, because I suppose in the beginning I was more of a voyeur, wasn't I?
Absolutely.
I like to watch.
You like to watch.
But going to the club and being in that environment where you see, obviously up until we went to the club, we were just literally having house visits. So it would just be us and maybe a single gentleman. Going to the club and you seeing other people having fun and having sex and everything else, it's an incredible thing to watch. But then I suddenly found out that I actually liked being watched quite a bit.
An exhibitionist. You changed from a voyeur to an exhibitionist.
Yeah.
So it definitely changed us sexually and as people. Yeah. Definitely. We learned so much. We became so much more accepting. Not that we've got any prejudices before, but we actually physically, spent time with people that we would never have had the opportunity to spend time with. We got to spend time with these incredible people that in our normal lives, we wouldn't have had that amount of time to spend with, chatting and just learning about their lifestyle. And it enriched us. It enriched us as people. And there's this tremendous social side to the life.
Massive.
And then, of course, COVID came along and we lost all of that.
Yeah.
That went. So we wrote a book. We sat down in COVID. We had all this time on the hands. And I don't do sitting, do I?
You're not a sitter, dear.
And so Mrs. N would go away and write little bits, just scribble bits down of experiences.
Well, in fairness, we'd talked a lot about our own past, hadn't we, when we first met? So we kind of knew each other's background and history and ex-partners and things like that. So Mr. N already knew a lot about my life, and it was a case of like, well, we chatted to people online, hadn't we? We chatted to other women online who maybe had had similar problems and things. And, we used to get so many nice responses from people saying, you don't realize what you've done for me, just being able to talk about it, or just knowing that somebody else has gone through it or going through it makes a massive difference. And I just said to Mr. N, if we can do that literally just by messaging people, what if we told the whole story?
But neither of us had ever done books or anything like this. We weren't writers. So you'd scribble things down and memories and things, and I'd go away and compile it.
Yeah.
And just compile it and put it all together and edit bits out and put, and it became a book. It literally became a book of Mrs. N's story, literally from losing her virginity right up to finding Liberty Elite, which changed our lives. And so it was literally, it's called, her journey from becoming, from a vanilla life to becoming a hot wife.
Yeah.
And the book is called Vanilla to Vixen. Vanilla to Vixen, my journey from vanilla life to becoming a hot wife. And We thought about 6 people would read it.
I didn't even think anybody would read it, to be honest. I thought nobody's going to be interested in this.
It was pure filth. But in the same way, shortly before that time, obviously you'd had Christian Grey and 50 Shades of Grey. And again, naively, because it was naive, we thought that had done wonders for the BDSM side of life. But oh, how we know differently now. That the people in fetish people and people in BDSM scene over here hate 50 Shades of Grey. Because obviously it's got the non-consent in it, and so they despise it and don't want to be associated with that. But by the same ruling, there was nothing for non-monogamy, there was nothing for swinging, and we wanted to just portray it as how normal we were, and we just had this kink, this fetish that we just wanted to follow through and just see where it went.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming your book's been read by a lot of people.
Just 1 or 2.
Yeah, I have to be honest, it completely blew us away.
We sent it to a few publishers, literally just almost like the impossible dream, to get published would be amazing. And we got a response. We got a response back from this publisher, and they wanted to take the book on, and we were just absolutely like, can't believe it. But then the contract came through, and it was a really rubbish contract. And it meant that we couldn't even write a diary because they would own it. Everything in the future, they would own. And we were just like, no, we're not signing that. But it made us realise, we went to a friend and we had to kind of come out and say, look, we're swingers. This is what we do. We've written this. And we put trust in him, and he was wonderful. And he said, well, if a publisher believes in it, then you should believe in it. Just self-publish it. And so that's what we did.
Yeah.
We went down the self-publishing route, and the book's available through Amazon. We did it through Amazon, and it was just unbelievable. It just took off, and we're still gobsmacked. We're still absolutely
gobsmacked by it.
Yeah.
And it's weird because I've had people that have actually asked for like signed copies and all sorts, and it's like, this is ridiculous.
And people send us photos of like the book on planes and
when they're on holiday. Yeah,
Eiffel Tower in Paris, and we took a picture of it. It's just like,
I love it.
It's insane.
I love it. It's brilliant.
That is amazing. Well, and it's obviously impacting people, right? Your story is, sure, there's probably some filth and fun, sexy times in there, but there's so much in there that people are relating to, whether they have the exact same medical condition or something else that is a huge hurdle that they've had to overcome.
And anything body conscious. At the end of the day, it's just body consciousness. So if anybody feels unsexy about themselves for whatever reason, this is what the feedback we get is that they relate to the book. Yeah. Because Mrs. N felt unsexy about yourself.
Oh, terribly.
So yeah.
I'd never ever seen myself as a particularly attractive person. I was up until meeting Mr. N, I was definitely never made to feel, as if I was anything special. So it's taken me a very, very long time. And even when, we were online and you were chatting to people, and single guys would message us, I'd love to shag you and all this, that, and the other. And it's like, yeah, but you're only saying that. You're only saying how beautiful I am because that's all you want. You just want to get
sex. You just want sex.
And so it's taken many, many years for me to actually say, well, do you know what? All these people can't be wrong. But then when I started to get compliments from the women, that's when it kind of hit me, because when you get a compliment, when a woman gets another compliment from another woman, it's so sincere. And that kind of blew me away, because I was getting lots of compliments from other women about, my figure and everything, which Mr. M will tell you. I know we're all the same. We all hate things about our bodies and stuff, but to have other women compliment you is just, it's such an amazing feeling.
And for us, that's the community. That wasn't just exclusively to us. We found this community that everybody, we say everybody straightened each other's crowns. You could go in there, there'd be no ridicule. There'd be no, everybody straightened each other's crowns and would point out something that they liked about somebody else. It's like, you're wearing amazing shoes, or, you know, you look beautiful, your hair looks fantastic. It's like, it's just this beautiful community. And in today's age of social media and such negativity surrounding everybody, it was a little bit unbelievable.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you two had, first of all, that you found something that worked for you two, and that you were able to go on that journey together in a way that felt not just good, but like nourishing and healing, and that you've been on it for over a decade now. And then you're able to take all of that, take everything you've experienced and learned and healed, and put it into a book. And now it's impacting and helping other people sort of, again, even if it's not the exact same thing, they're seeing themselves in that story. And I think there's just, I mean, clearly we put stories out there all the time because we believe in the power of them and the power of not being alone. And I think just so much gratitude to the both of you for taking that upon yourselves and doing that work. And, you know, writing a book is not a small task, and you did it, you self-published it, and now people are on the Eiffel Tower taking pictures of it. Like, how fucking cool is that?
And we host events as well, so we get to meet people. And it's just, we've become hosts at Liberty Elite. So, and that was like just purely through the book, you know, the previous owner of Liberty Elite saw the opportunity and was just like, look, you've got to meet people, you know, this is the place where you can meet people. So we get a chance to meet people, and they can meet Mrs. N.
Yeah.
And it's just wonderful meeting all these people.
I think the one thing that we've always wanted to do is to be totally honest. And we said when we decided that we were going to do the podcast that it had to be just so real. So the good, the bad, and the ugly, because, you know, like anything in life, it's not always plain sailing. And our journey certainly hasn't been plain sailing. You know, like you say, we've got catfished and we've had bad meats and things like that. But
with our events, we create the same environment as we would have wanted on our first visit to the club.
Yeah.
So obviously, because all the nights are so different, so our nights are predominantly for newcomers. But the nice thing is it's vanilla to Vixen, so we still have the established Vixens that want to come along and meet new people. And like you said, I think nourish is a wonderful word that you used. So they nourish the newcomers and go, look, you're safe here. You know, we're not predators. We're not going to jump on you. It's a safe social environment. And if you want anything else to happen here, even just amongst yourselves, perhaps you want to go off to a playroom just amongst yourselves, you're safe. Nobody expects anything of you. And, you know, there's no expectations. There's no pressure. And so we're very, very proud of our night and what, you know, what that has created, really, aren't we?
Yeah. I mean, I if somebody had asked me when we first started sort of fantasizing and things and said, you know, doing this is going to make your relationship so much stronger, and you will be more in love with the person that you're already completely and utterly in love with, I'd have gone, no, it's not possible. It's not possible. But that is exactly what happens. And I didn't think I could love Mr. N any more than I already did. But the feelings you get, which I know some people struggle with, and it's like, well, hang on, you're having sex with other men. How can that possibly make you love your husband even more? But it's almost like, it's like showing the ultimate love, because I see the reaction Mr. N gets when he sees me playing with somebody else. It's almost like I've given him the ultimate gift.
And that has developed now that we've just recently kind of experimented with full swap.
Yeah.
And so it's taken a long, long time. And that's one of the things we say to people, that there's no rules to this journey. If it takes 20 years or if it never happens, it's not important. The destination is not important. It's the journey. And as long as you enjoy doing what you're doing and you stay on the same page with your partner, sometimes you'll want to rush ahead. Sometimes you'll be lagging behind your partner a bit. And the important thing is just to listen, communicate with your partner and stay on that same page with them. And you know, that's respect as well. Respect your partner, and as much as keep on the same page together. And that's what we kind of preach, I suppose.
We do, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm also curious, Mrs. N, it sounds like, you brought up like the closeness in your relationship for sure, but it also sounds like so much of this journey, like if you think back to who you were, the person you were 30 years ago to where you are today, like would you ever imagine you're at where you're at today?
Not in a million years. Never. I mean, good grief. I remember there was a conversation that me and Mr. N had when we'd not been going out very long. And he brought up the subject of anal sex. And my reaction was, oh, good God, I'm never doing that. That's ridiculous. And then it was just, it was funny because when we did have the conversation where obviously I was getting more and more frustrated with my problem and everything else. And obviously Mr. N was just like, I can't keep watching you go through this pain and everything. He said, how do you feel about trying the anal only?
She had done anal sex at this point. The oh my God, I couldn't do that lasted about a week.
Yeah, that was your fault.
But yeah.
I think that was a challenge to him because it wasn't long afterwards. It was just like we were staying at your parents' house.
Yeah, but to go back to what you were talking about there. I mean, going to the club, it was not plain sailing, which we've written in the book. It was like a very erotic scene in the playroom, and there were lots of ladies and lots of guys all having sex. And Mrs. M walked in there, and she was faced with something that she personally herself couldn't do. These guys were literally, there was some very energetic sex. Let's put it that way.
Light way of putting it.
And Mrs. N burst into tears, and I said, "Come on, we're going home." And that night we talked about it, and that's when I said to Mrs. N, I'd already, I'd done so much research on the problem and everything. I said, look, let's take pussy sex, vaginal sex off the table, just temporarily. Let's not do that. Let's just do anal, and we did that for a long time.
Yeah, a very long time. I mean, it turned out that I absolutely loved it. And the reaction you get from some guys when they find out that you're anal only is like they've won the lottery. So it was that for me, it was nice. I went from feeling inadequate and not normal, as I said, to all of a sudden being a little bit of
your superpower.
It's my superpower. Because there's not many ladies that do actually, like it or enjoy it.
And you could orgasm through it.
Absolutely. And it was almost like, I can have actually a sex. I mean, if somebody had said to me when I first met Mr. N, you are going to have one of the most amazing sex lives, you won't believe it. I'd have gone, yeah, right. It's just, that's never going to happen. And when I look back now and think about the amount of fun that we've had and the enjoyment we've had, and the fact that we've discovered this together, it is absolutely amazing. And my whole thing has always been, I need to share this with people. I need people to understand this lifestyle can give you so much as a person, in a relationship. And that was one of the things we did about when we did the events. It's just like, there's so many people out there that don't understand it because they have this preconceived idea of what a swinger is. Yeah. And it's like, I want to educate people and want to show them how good it can be.
But coming out wasn't all plain sailing either. And it sadly has cost some relationships with your family members.
Yeah.
Who just didn't understand it. And they were shocked and horrified in their words. And so it's important to realize that not everybody will understand or appreciate your lifestyle choices, and it can come at a cost. And I think that's an important thing to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
And our reaction to that is, look, this is just us, and we're always here. If this, you loved us and you liked us before you found this out, and before we openly publicized this, we don't have our real names. We call ourselves Mr. and Mrs. N, and that's out of respect for our families, so that we're not obviously we're identifiable by voices and by our posters and things. There are posters of things around with us, but we don't never use our real names, and that's out of respect for our families, because we perhaps choose this lifestyle, but they don't, and that's an important thing to respect. But by the same ruling, we do love the community, and we love doing what we do. but it has come at a cost, and that's really sad.
It's part of life, though, unfortunately.
Mm.
So
yeah,
it's one of those things you have to balance. And I'm still hopeful that one day they will see that they will just see that, at the end of the day, we're incredibly happy. And I know if it was me on the other side, all I'd wish for my family is that they are enjoying life and they are happy.
And what you're doing isn't harming you.
Exactly.
That's the thing. If it's kind of drug abuse or alcohol abuse, then that could be something that is harming you. But what we're doing doesn't harm anyone.
Well, quite the opposite. It's healing in so many ways. It's healing body image, emotional side of you. You're just soup to nuts. It sounds like every aspect of who you are is showing up with more confidence, more love for yourself, more love for other people, more openness for other people. Every aspect of it is better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mr. N will definitely say, but you are more accepting when you are within the naughty hobby.
Yeah.
You become more accepting of people. And I think you always also realize what's important in life and what's not important. So you don't take the tiny little things and make them a big deal, because it's just like, life's too short. You need to enjoy yourself.
You look at life differently. Like, obviously we've had, it's given us so many opportunities. We go on journeys and trips and things.
I don't know. To me, it's so much about what your story is about, right? You starting with you, Mr. N, just seeing Mrs. N and accepting her for who she is, whatever she brings to the table. That's what we're doing now. That's the journey we're on. And you two have been on it for almost 20 years now. And it's a beautiful one.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And just to, in the interest of time, so we don't take all of your evening, you have the book. People can find that. Links will be in the show notes. And then you are currently doing a podcast as well. And what could people expect on the podcast? Where could they find it?
Oh, bless you. Yes. We did this book that we thought about 6 people would read. And we're like, okay, we're publicizing it now. How are we going to publicize it? We didn't have a very sort of rich advertising campaign or anything like that. We couldn't afford much like that. So we were like, let's do a podcast.
Yeah,
let's do a podcast. And we actually we sent off to another podcaster. We won't name them, obviously, and we got quite a rude reply back. So we were like, oh, okay then. And Mrs. N's like, look, we've practically got a recording studio in the back of the house. We could do this. But that was a big step, because we're like, okay, we can hide behind Mr. and Mrs. N on paper, but once we do a podcast, we're out there. People will hear our voices. And so we did this podcast. We were going to do 6 episodes, maybe 8. And that was it.
It was, yeah. That was the plan.
And we're on episode 87 now. And it's been mind blowing. And yeah, it's on iTunes and Spotify. It's called Vanilla to Vixen. And we're in the iTunes top 10 over here in the UK. And it's insane. And again, people write in, and we've had people write in who were actually our first full swap couple.
Yeah.
Who, again, we now adore, who are close friends. We've been on vanilla trips with them, and we go around their house and they come around ours. They know personal things. They're just best of friends. And this is all through the podcast and just chatting. And one of the proudest things that we've done through the podcast is when we got outed, which was sadly through a family member. That was a pretty bad time for us. And so we opened something called the Reach Out Room.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
And we had all these people flock to us because we'd been outed, and it was really kind of bad. And we were forced to tell our kids. And that was the worst thing. Our youngest daughter was 16 at the time. And so we're like, okay, well, we've got this group of people behind us, but if somebody's in the swinging lifestyle and this happens to them, they've got nobody. What do we do? What do they do? And so we had this group of people that just said, look, we'll volunteer it. We'll be on there, a reach out room, So we've got this reach out room on Discord, which is part of our Vanilla to Vixen podcast. And we've got volunteers who 24 hours, 7 days a week, if somebody clicks and it's all, you can do it anonymously. You can click in there. And if you've got a problem, you can talk to someone who's in the swinging lifestyle, and they will just listen to you. They will just listen to you and just chat with you and say, look, you're not a deviant, you're not whatever. They're aware of it. If people get outed and things like that, they can help. They know what to say. And that's one of the things we're most proud about.
Really proud. We just had to take a negative situation and turn something positive into it, didn't we?
Yeah.
Because I feel, even though I know there's good sides and bad sides to being in this lifestyle, but on the whole, it's been such a positive thing for us. My confidence is just soaring, which is now sort of spilled over into my vanilla life and my work life, which has made such a difference. And it's all down to being in the naughty hobby. And I wouldn't change that for anything.
Yeah. I love that. That's amazing. And I'm just so grateful that you two have not just done it for yourselves, but done it for the community. And I think that's beautiful. And would love to, I would say, it sounds like we have a really great place to pick up the next time we bring you on to talk about your launch into Full Swap. And maybe we can even talk a little bit more about the being outed and that journey. Cause I want to make sure that gets its adequate, time that I believe it would take to sort of unpack that. And so maybe we bring you back on in the future and we get to unpack that and take us into the next phase.
We would absolutely love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Well,
it's been so wonderful meeting you two guys. It's been absolutely brilliant.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much for everything you've shared too. It's been great to chat with you.
Yeah, it's been great to get to know you too, and to expand our podcast network across the seas. We've doubled it in size, so that's amazing. And
absolutely, we will be letting people know, obviously, on our Discord group that they need to listen to your podcast because we think it's brilliant. And you guys are really, really
I know
amazing.
you guys are so busy, but you are always welcome on Vanilla to Vixen. Always welcome. We would love to have your story on Vanilla to Vixen. It'd be awesome.
Wonderful. Well, I will say that will most likely happen, and it will probably most likely happen later this year when life gives us a little breather. Somebody's in grad school, and it's a wild ride at the moment. So we're hanging on by the skin of our teeth.
Bless you.
Thank you both for all of the work that you've done as well, and just you've taken your journey and turned it into also like continuing your journey and helping others as well. Resource. And it's beautiful. So. Yeah, with that, we will end for today and hopefully
cliffhanger.
Hopefully, meet back up in the future.
Leave them wanting more. That's
absolutely
what
right.
And we wish you the absolute best with grad school. We wish you the best with that, and we will see you definitely after. Hopefully, it's all qualified and all good.
That's right. Well, thank you both, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
And we're back.
We are back. Thank you so much, Mr. and Mrs. N, for everything that you shared and for the amazing work that you do too for your book and for the podcast and just, being all around great humans.
Yes, echoing Emma's gratitude. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you, listeners, for bearing with us on our first intro back after more than 8 months of being off.
Oh my gosh. Okay, it's only been a month, people. It's only been a month.
When you love your baby this much, it feels like 8 months. Yeah?
Yeah, it's true.
Right. So yes, just a quick reminder to anybody listening who's maybe part of the premium subscription who didn't get all of the juicy goodness up in the intro. We are doing a in-person retreat here in the Bay Area, September 13th to the 15th. That is for people who are in our virtual community. So if you're not part of the virtual community, now is the best time to join. And then you get to come and join us in person in San Francisco in September.
Mm-hmm.
More information you can find at normalizingnonmonogamy.com, clicking on the community tab.
And a quick reminder to check out the Week of Visibility for Non-Monogamy, July 15th to the 19th. If you're not sure what we're talking about, go to weekofvisibility.com and check it all out. You can also go and listen to last week's episode 341 with Brett. We talk all about it.
Talk all about wove.
And a quick reminder, links to the work that Mrs. and Mr. N are doing are in the show notes as well. Please go and check it out. Next week.
Yes. We have an amazing interview with Allie.
Yes.
I'm not going to spoil it. It's a great conversation. We are excited to see you all in a week. It'll only be a week this time, not months like last time. But we look forward to it. Until then, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your May. May's just about over. Mm-hmm. And then we get to do June.
Yes.
All right.
I think that's it.
That's all.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.